Hi, welcome to my complete guide on Yunli. Yunli is our newest 5-star coming in version 2.4 of Honkai Star Rail. She is looking to be a direct upgrade from Clara as her kit revolves around countering enemies' attacks with her own follow-up attacks. But this time, also using her ultimate at the right time to deal massive damage too. In this video, I'll be going through everything you need to know on how to build and play Yunli, going through her best Icons, Relic sets, Planar Ornaments, teams, and many more. Before we start, I'll be giving away 2 supply passes / Rocket Moon / Crystal Cards to my subscribers at 5k subs, so make sure you subscribe to enter. To begin, what does Yunli do? Yunli is a 5-star physical character following the path of destruction. Yunli's skill, Bladeborn Quick, deals blast damage and heals herself for a bit. Yunli's ultimate, Earthbind Ether Break, costs 120 energy with a maximum energy of 240, which gains parry and taunts all enemies. When parry is active, she gains crit damage and gets 2 versions of an empowered counter attack. The first version is just a slightly improved one, and the second version is a much more upgraded one, but it requires you to use your ultimate right before the enemy attacks. Yunli's talent, Flash Forge, makes her launch a counterattack upon being hit while also generating energy. And Yunli's technique, Posterior Precedence, basically does 1 instance of the empowered counterattack's damage. As for her bonus trace abilities, the first is True Sunder, which increases her attack when countering. The second is Demon Quell, which resists crowd control and damage taken when Yunli has parry. And last but not least, Fairy Wheel, which basically makes it so if you mistime your ultimate, next time you mistime it, the counter attack will be the upgraded one. All in all, Yunli has quite an interesting kit. For trace priorities, you want to focus on ultimate, skill, talent, then basic. As for her kit, it is not quite as unique as some of the other recent releases we have, as we do have a counter attacker called Clara already, but Yunli should be a much more fun and active character to play compared to her, as you do need to make sure you are using your ultimate at the right times and during the enemy's turns to maximize your damage. Which brings me on to how to play Yunli. If you could not already tell, Yunli has a very active and quote-unquote skillful playstyle. She isn't your typical spam skill onto your ultimate DPS, but rather, you need to be on the lookout for her ultimate and the enemy's attacks. Everything else on her kit is pretty self-explanatory, but for her ultimate, it requires a lot more attention than any other DPS, as you have to make sure it doesn't overcap and make sure you use it right before any enemy attacks. And due to basically all her damage and energy coming from this mechanic, you also need to be building her and her teams correctly to make sure you are maximizing her chances of getting hit too. Which brings us onto how to actually build Yunli, starting off with her best light cones. As per usual, her best in slot will be a signature light cone, Dance at Sunset, which increases the chances for her to be attacked while also increases crit damage and damage dealt on follow-up attacks. Pretty obviously, this is everything she needs. A small taunt for more counters and more damage on her most important attacks makes this her best in slot. However, not far behind is actually D-Heal's Lightcone. If you are playing Yunli with Links, which I'll get into later, D-Heal's Lightcone will actually be quite similar compared to her signature Lightcone. And even without Links, it is still an incredible choice on Yunli. However, as per usual for destruction units, on the fall of an Aeon is the best free to play with Blaze Lightcone not being too bad too. And as for 4 stars, I can only really recommend Under the Blue Sky or A Secret Vow. Moving on to Yunli's best Relic sets and Planar Ornaments, the best in stock would be the relatively new Wind Soaring Valorous set released in version 2.3. This Relic set is basically tailor-made for her as she launches many follow-up attacks, and set attacks launched by her ultimate are also count as ultimate damage. Due to that, this set is perfect for her. But that being said, a good second option would be a Longevous Disciple, which provides a really nice crit rate buff. Otherwise, Ash Blazing and Pioneer Diver will be okay option too, with 2-piece of any one of these sets being usable as per usual. For Planar Ornaments, Yunli's best in slot will be Duran, as she can stack it up really easily, which makes this a really insane set for her. Other than that, Inner Sacerdo will always be an option for follow-up attackers, with Sigonia being really good too, especially if you're running her in Pure Fiction. Now for Yunli's best Relic and Planar stats. Her main stats will be Crit Body, Attack Boots, Physical Balls, and Attack Rope. A pretty simple and obvious choice for main stats, as she does get off the traditional DPS stats. The body will be crit, but usually crit rate, as you do get 100 crit damage through her ultimate, so making sure you actually crit will be more beneficial. boost will be attack, as similarly to Clara, you rely on the enemy's attacks to do more damage and generate more energy. Although unlike Clara, you don't have a downside for having more turns, the speed that you gain from the boost generally does perform worse than attack boots. Balls will be physical as she is that element, but attack will be decent if you have really insane substats, and rope generally will be attack. However, there are certain situations where ERR Rope may perform better due to the extreme reliance on her ultimate, so do keep that in mind. As for her substats, the usual crit rate, damage, and attack will be your best ones, with some defensive stats not being too bad either as you will be getting hit a lot. Next up is Yunli's best Eidolons. E1 will be a really good Eidolon as it directly buffs her most important damage source. E2 is also quite insane as it ignores defense, and we all know how that goes. E3 and 5 are just trace levels. E4 is more of a quality of life thing, generally doesn't increase her damage at all, and E6 is also quality of life, but this time also increasing her damage after empowered follow-up attack, which is always nice. E1 and 2 are really strong, so stopping at either one of those is a good idea. And as for the age-old question of E1 versus S1, this time there is a bit of a caveat as it really depends on if you're using links or not. If you are, then E1 will be a better option, but if you're not, the taunt of the S1 is a much better option just for consistency alone. Finally, last but not least, we get to Yunli's best teammates and teams. Buckle up and take a seat, hold on tight, because this will be a very important part of Yunli. I want to start off by mentioning how to properly position a Yunli team. You want to make sure you are using her teams in this order: Support, Yunli, Sustain, and Flex. Due to a lot of enemies' attacks being blast, even if your preservation steals the aggro, it will still hit Yunli and it will still be fine. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a chart for aggro/taunt values for each path. With higher the number, higher the chance to be attacked. As you can see, Hunt and Erudition are the lowest, with Preservation being the highest. But this might bring up the question, with Preservation units having higher taunt values compared to Destruction units, isn't it bad to run them with Yunli? Well, in most cases, the correct positioning of your team, as I mentioned before, will make this a non-issue. But in certain cases, where the enemy only or majority has single target attack, this is in fact a bit of a problem. But nevertheless, what Preservation units bring to a Yunli team is usually still very valuable, and the times where this is a problem is relatively rare. So for best teammate options, first I want to mention Links. This is the best free-to-play sustain option, and honestly her best sustain except maybe 2 other sustains, as Links is able to add taunt to Destruction character, which is what Yunli is. However, this all is assuming that if you don't have her Lycon. If you do, then Links is just her best free-to-play sustain and not her best sustain overall. Other teammates include follow-up attack characters like Topaz, Aventuring, Robin, and such, which will all work great with Yunli. And as she is really energy hungry, Tingyun and Huohuo will be great options to help her ultimate uptime. So her best team will be something like this, with Robin, Yunli, Huohuo, and Tingyun. But for a more premium option, we can use something like this with the IPC members. Otherwise, this free-to-play team will be a really strong team too, as Tingyun and Pella are just so broken. However, that being said, using Sparkle or Bronya over Tingyun will also be great options too, as unlike Clara, Yunli doesn't necessarily hate getting more turns. And as for dual DPS teams, they are generally pretty good too, as long as they have good synergy. So yeah, that does it. Yunli is looking like a super interesting and fun character to play. I am super looking forward to this more active and less turn-based playstyle, as it will be a really fresh experience for the game. Hopefully they continue to make more kits that feature something like this ultimate, where it should be used during the enemy's turns more than usual. But considering that this is still a turn-based game, they should be a bit careful unless they just don't care and we get Genshin 2.0.